Shut them up, now. They are so loud. I was happily living with my husband and my sweet mother-in-law, but things changed after our daughter was born. Our daughter cried at night, and I started getting yelled at and treated coldly. One day, while my husband was swamped with work at home, our suddenly crying daughter went silent in just the brief moment I looked away. But she wasn't just sleeping. She woke up convulsing. After taking her to the emergency room and hearing the doctor's diagnosis, I decided to get a divorce. My name is Michelle Stevens. I'm a 28-year-old stay-at-home mom. I live with my husband, John, our daughter, Emily, and my mother-in-law, making it a family of 4. I met John 6 years ago at my former job. We were hired at the same time and worked in the same department. From the beginning, I was impressed with his innovative ideas, which didn't seem like they came from someone who started at the same time as me. I was curious about what kind of person he was. He was different from our colleagues. He seemed a bit odd and kept to himself. But when I approached him, I realized he was an interesting guy, though a bit unique. For example, because he loves his job and constantly thinks of new ideas, he has a routine meal plan to avoid deciding what to eat for lunch. It's like, Monday is curry, Tuesday is ramen, Wednesday is grilled fish, and so on. So it wasn't that he didn't like spending time with colleagues, but he ate alone to stick to his routine. All I had to do was adjust my lunch schedule to his, and spending time with him became easy. Though we often talked about work when we were together, I learned a lot, and I enjoyed our conversations. He had some other quirks because he's so dedicated to his job, but I found them endearing. I was the one who confessed my feelings and said, "Let's date." He laughed and replied, "I was gonna ask you out soon." Our relationship didn't change much after we started dating. We didn't go on typical romantic dates. Instead, we often ate lunch together and discussed our work projects. However, for the first time since we began dating, he introduced me to his mother. He didn't like spending time on household chores because it took away from his work, so he lived with his mother. From what I heard, his family background was complicated. His parents divorced when he was 10. John stayed with his mother, and his younger sister, who was just a baby, went with their father. He hadn't had any contact with his father or sister since then. I was bracing myself for a very protective mother, but when I met her, she was a wonderful person. Unlike the reserved John, she was talkative and cheerful. She treated me just as warmly as she did her son. Sometimes when John was too busy with work, she and I would go out together. I got along really well with both John and his mother. 3 years into our relationship, after John proposed, his mother jokingly said, "If John's getting married, I guess I should move out." To which I eagerly replied, "I'd be upset if you did. Living with you is one of the reasons I said yes to the proposal. If you're okay with it, please stay with us." She laughed and said, "You sure about that? I might be hard on you." I laughed it off, saying, "Bring it on." John, watching us, laughed too. For the next 2 years, we lived together without any problems. She took care of all the household chores for John and me, who were both working. Even when I offered to help, she would say, "You must be tired, let me handle it," and she'd do everything herself. Occasionally, on weekends when John was busy working from home, she and I would cook or bake together, which was always fun. John remained dedicated to his job even after we got married. I believe our home was cheerful thanks to his mother, and I was grateful for that. Things started to change when I discovered I was pregnant. 2 years into our marriage, I felt unwell, and at the advice of John's mother, I went to a doctor, who confirmed my pregnancy. John was thrilled when I told him, but his mother's reaction was lukewarm. Considering how she always rejoiced in our happy moments more than we did, I sensed something was amiss. That night, in our bedroom, I asked John about it. He explained, Mom, she had postpartum depression after my sister was born. Dad was working in a different city at the time, so she had to take care of both of us by herself. It must have been tough. One day, she left the house with just me. I haven't seen my sister or dad since then. I regretted being so thoughtless and hurting her feelings. I didn't know there was such a backstory. If I'd known, I would have told John first and thought more about how to break the news to her. Seeing my disappointment, John smiled and said, "It's been almost 20 years since then. She'll be fine." Just as my husband said, my mother-in-law didn't change a bit from the next day onward. If anything, she became even more concerned about my health, preparing meals with even more attention to ensure I was getting all the necessary nutrients, and accompanying me to the hospital in my husband's place among many other things. Feeling reassured by her, I decided to give birth here instead of going back to my parents' house. Initially, I had thought about having the baby at my parents' house, but it was in the countryside and quite far away, so the idea of looking for a hospital there and preparing to go back seemed like too much of a hassle. Luckily, my mother-in-law said, "I'll help you out," and I was able to give birth safely. I think I will never forget the moment my daughter, Emily, was born. She had already been precious to me while in my belly, but the moment I saw her face for the first time, I felt an overwhelming surge of affection and could unconditionally vow to protect her no matter what, and make her happy. Both my husband and my mother-in-law were happy about Emily's birth, and I think that was the happiest time of my life. However, that happiness gradually started to crumble. After bringing Emily home from the hospital, I took a year-long maternity leave, thinking that I would help with childcare and household chores. But my mother-in-law said, "I've always taken care of the house, and that's not going to change. You don't need to worry about it." True to her word, she took care of various things around the house as she always did, but she wouldn't get involved with Emily. I even felt an atmosphere as if she was deliberately avoiding her. My mother-in-law, who always listened attentively to what I had to say, would give vague responses or pretend not to hear when the topic of Emily came up. I was saddened by my mother-in-law's behavior, which seemed like she was ignoring my daughter, but I couldn't speak up strongly because I knew about her past. Even after 6 months since Emily was born, my mother-in-law remained the same. By this time, Emily could perfectly distinguish between people's faces, recognizing her father, who didn't have much time to interact with her due to work, and would smile at him. My husband still prioritized work, but when he had the time, he would talk to Emily and try to communicate with her, so he was delighted that she started smiling at him. Around that time, Emily started having episodes of night crying. I haven't seen many other children, so I'm not sure, but I think Emily's night crying was on the severe side. She would cry non-stop for 2 to 3 hours in the middle of the night quite frequently. I felt sorry for my husband and my mother-in-law waking up because of it, so I tried to soothe Emily in the living room or the bathroom, as far away from the bedroom as possible. However, since our house was not that big, they could still hear her. The number of times my husband and my mother-in-law mentioned that it was loud last night had increased. Although my husband is one thing, my mother-in-law usually never complained about anything, so I think this was probably the first complaint she ever made to me. I tried my best to soothe Emily, but her night crying didn't stop. Gradually, my husband and my mother-in-law seemed to become more irritable, and their way of speaking became more and more rough, saying things like, "It's so noisy," and "Make her stop crying." At the end of that year, there was an important planning meeting at my husband's company. Whether his project idea would be accepted at this meeting would determine if he would be entrusted with a project in the next fiscal year. It was that kind of meeting. Knowing how important this meeting was, I planned to go back to my parents' house for 2 nights and 3 days starting 2 days before the meeting, so that my husband's work wouldn't be disrupted by Emily's night crying. I was being considerate in my own way. However, things didn't go as planned. In fact, I ended up going back to my parents' house even sooner. It was the weekend, less than a week before my husband's presentation, and he was working on his proposal at home. I had planned to go out so as not to disturb him, but it was raining heavily that day. Since I didn't have a driver's license, I hesitated to go out with Emily. If we went out in the heavy rain of December, Emily would surely catch a cold, that's what I thought. Reluctantly, I stayed at home, paying extra attention to not let Emily cry. However, she suddenly started crying. She had just had her milk, and her diaper was clean. I was playing with her while holding her, and I didn't understand why she started crying. Trying to keep the crying sound from reaching my husband as much as possible, I moved with Emily to the bathroom, the furthest place from the bedroom where my husband was working, and tried desperately to soothe her. But Emily wouldn't stop crying. Then, my husband opened the door of the bedroom and shouted, "It's too noisy. Make her stop crying now." This way of speaking was unthinkable from the husband I knew when we first got married, but this was pretty much what he had been like recently. I understand that work is important, but I thought he didn't have to speak in such a manner. I was so careful, and yet Emily started crying, and I got yelled at by my husband. I felt like crying myself, thinking. But I thought that once my husband gets a break from work, things would go back to normal. And my daughter Emily, she'll stop crying someday, right? So I tried desperately to hold back my tears. I had just fed her, thinking that I needed to do something, but then I decided to give Emily another bottle of milk. I thought, maybe if she's full, she might just fall asleep. Unfortunately, since I physically can't produce breast milk, I had no choice but to boil water and prepare formula. I couldn't just leave Emily in the bathroom while I made it, so I brought her to the living room and laid her down in the crib. My mother-in-law, who was there in the living room, frowned as Emily continued to cry and said, "Hey, when is she going to stop crying? John can't concentrate on his work, and I can't stand this noise anymore." Recently, my husband John and my mother-in-law have been acting like this. She helps with housework and talks to me, but when it comes to Emily, she doesn't touch her, and if she does, she just complains. That's how my mother-in-law has been lately. I apologized to my mother-in-law and asked her to watch Emily for a bit. I went to the kitchen and quickly prepared the milk. Even then, I could hear Emily's piercing cries. But by the time the water had cooled down and the milk was ready, the crying had suddenly stopped. I knew it. My mother-in-law did it. She got Emily to stop crying. I was touched. When I returned to the living room, just as I thought, Emily was asleep. My mother-in-law was sitting on the sofa, reading a book. When I thanked her, saying, "You're really something else. There's nothing like the touch of someone who has raised kids before," she responded, "I suppose," but she seemed somewhat brusque. I felt a slight discomfort with her response, but I was relieved that we weren't disturbing John, so I didn't pay it much mind. However, Emily did not wake up even after about 3 hours. If this continues, she won't be able to sleep at night and might start crying again. That's what I thought, so I decided to wake her up. But even when I called to her, Emily wouldn't open her eyes. When I tapped her lightly on the shoulder, she opened her eyes, but she seemed dazed, and her eyes weren't focusing properly. She was acting different from when she is usually groggy after a nap. I became worried and consulted my mother-in-law, telling her that something seemed off with Emily, but without even looking at her, she said, "It's probably just your imagination. She'll be fine." I believed my mother-in-law's words and waited for a while, but Emily's eyes never focused. Scared, I went to my husband John, who was working in the bedroom. "I know you're busy, but can you take out the car? Something's wrong with Emily. She seems completely out of it. It's strange. I'm worried. I want to take her to the hospital, please." I pleaded desperately, but John, seemingly annoyed, said, "Are you sure it's not just your imagination? What does my mom say?" "Your mom says she's fine, but she's clearly not okay to me." "If mom says she's fine, then she must be okay. I need to finish this today, don't bother me." "But I'm really worried." When I said this, John raised his voice, "Give me a break. Can't you see I'm working? I thought she finally stopped crying, and now you want to go to the hospital? Don't be ridiculous." I was so stunned by my husband's outburst that I couldn't say anything. Then, turning back to his computer, John muttered, "I never wanted a kid in the first place." His words still ring in my ears to this day. I couldn't believe my ears. It was unthinkable for John to say something like that. But I definitely saw him say it. I couldn't stop crying from the shock. I never thought John would say something like that. I left the bedroom, still crying, but when I saw Emily, my tears dried up. She was having convulsions. I thought something was wrong. Just a moment ago, Emily seemed perfectly fine, she didn't look ill at all. Panicking, I called a taxi and rushed to the emergency room. I couldn't stop trembling at the thought of something happening to Emily. When we arrived at the hospital, a pediatrician saw us right away. "There's a possibility of shaken baby syndrome," he said, and decided to do a CT scan on Emily. I didn't know about the disease, so I frantically looked it up while I was in the waiting room. Shaken baby syndrome is apparently a condition where a baby, whose neck muscles are still undeveloped, suffers brain damage due to being violently shaken. I learned that in severe cases, it could lead to death, which made my blood run cold. For a while, I was stunned and couldn't think about anything else. I don't know how much time had passed, but I was called in because the doctor wanted to discuss the results of the examination. Fortunately, Emily doesn't have any hematoma, and she's calmed down now since we've given her an anticonvulsant. The doctor said, bringing me relief. However, the doctor then said something unbelievable. "But, Mom, when the nurse was undressing Emily for the examination, she found marks on her neck and shoulders that looked like they were made by an adult's fingers." I don't mean to be rude, but have you ever abused your daughter? I didn't understand what he was implying. Shaken baby syndrome is a condition that occurs when a baby is shaken vigorously. It can happen while trying to comfort them, or during play when they're being tossed in the air, and things unfortunately go wrong. We were thinking that might be the cause, but looking at those marks, it's also possible someone intentionally shook her quite hard. The doctor continued in a matter-of-fact tone. "If you don't remember anything, it could have been another family member. We were able to treat her in time this round, and there was no hematoma, so she's fine. But if the same thing happens again, we can't guarantee Emily will be safe. I think you should have a serious talk with your family." I couldn't get the doctor's words out of my head even after I left the examination room. I have never abused my daughter, and I've never seen any signs of abuse on her. There were no marks on her when I changed her diaper and dressed her earlier today. I could only think that my mother-in-law must have done something while I was making Emily's milk. Emily would need to stay in the hospital for about 3 days just to be safe, so I decided to go home to get the things we needed. "Did you do something to Emily?" I asked my mother-in-law in a trembling voice when I got back home. Then, my mother-in-law responded, "What?" I didn't do anything, in a clearly suspicious manner. Usually, she would ask, "What do you mean? What happened? Did something happen?" But this time, she just denied it without asking anything. "Tell me the truth." As I yelled and confronted her, she finally admitted it. I just grabbed and shook her a little because she was being too noisy. "A little? The doctor said there were severe marks on her neck and shoulders. Because of what you did, Emily was in serious danger." When I said that, my mother-in-law responded nonchalantly, "Danger? But she's fine now, right? So what's the big deal?" "What? How can you say that?" I raised my voice, and at that moment, my husband came out of the bedroom. "Shut up, both of you. Keep it down," he said before slamming the door shut with a loud bang. I had sent him a message earlier, telling him that Emily was having seizures and we were going to the hospital, but he didn't ask about her condition and just complained about the noise. My husband, who did not seem remorseful at all for putting our daughter in danger. And my mother-in-law, who was unapologetic and casual about the whole situation. I had thought we had a good relationship, but it turned out I was wrong. That moment was when I lost all affection for them and gave up on this family. And then I hurriedly grabbed the bags for the hospital stay and my own belongings and left the house. Luckily, I had planned to return to my parents' house, so I had travel luggage ready and I grabbed that. In the taxi heading to the hospital where my daughter Emily was, I made up my mind to get a divorce. Some might think this is an overreaction, but for me, it was a big deal. Of course, I was furious at my mother-in-law's actions, but the main cause was my husband's behavior. I do think my husband's job is tough. The upcoming planning meeting, whether he gets selected or not, would change how fulfilling his work is for the next fiscal year. But that's not the kind of job you continue doing, neglecting the fact that your daughter has to go to the ER and is hospitalized. It's not a life-threatening job, nor is it a job that only he can do. It's about whether he becomes the project leader or the assistant. Yet, I was fed up with my husband, who is the only father Emily has, for not coming to us, let alone asking about her condition. 3 days after the admission, Emily was safely discharged from the hospital. Intending to divorce my husband, I did not return home but went to my parents' house. My husband and mother-in-law were supposed to visit my parents' house from that day, so they probably didn't think anything of it when I didn't show up. They didn't contact me. Back at my parents' house, I told them what had happened. My mom hugged Emily and me, crying, and after my dad angrily slammed his fist on the desk, he said, "You don't have to go back there. Stay here with us. I'll protect you and Emily." I broke down in tears at his words. After that, my parents and I started looking into divorce. With our layman's research, all we could understand was that divorce seemed difficult. My mother-in-law's actions weren't continuous, so it couldn't be considered abuse. If the other party contested the divorce, it seemed like it would be difficult even if it went to mediation. So, I decided to play hardball. On the 3rd day at my parents' house, I received a message from my husband, John, saying, "The presentation went well, so come back home. Let's celebrate its success." Irritated by his carefree attitude, I decided to go back home once to talk about divorce. I didn't want Emily to see John or my mother-in-law ever again, so I asked my mom to keep her at my parents' house. When I got home, John, surprised that I came back alone, finally asked, "Where's Emily? Is she still in the hospital? Is she that sick?" "Emily has been discharged. She's at my parents' house now. Why didn't you bring her back with you?" "I want a divorce." Both John and my mother-in-law were stunned. "What? Emily was safe this time. But what if you had shaken her more violently? If I hadn't noticed and left it be, Emily might not have made it. Thinking about it, I'm scared of you. Anne." I tried to continue pointing out John's issues when he interrupted me. "If you are scared of my mom, we can live separately. So please reconsider the divorce." At his words, my mother-in-law confronted him, saying, "What? You'd choose Emily over me?" Ignoring her, John said to me, "See? Isn't that okay?" I continued what I was saying earlier. "No. I am disappointed in you, John. I can't believe you said, 'I never wanted kids,' and I'm disappointed that you prioritized your job over our daughter's life. Whether we live separately from your mom or not, I can only think of divorce." When I said that, John grabbed my hand. "No way! I was out of my mind back then because of work. I love you and Emily. I apologize, so please don't talk about divorce. I think words and actions under pressure reveal true feelings, so I can't trust you anymore. I won't divorce you even if it comes to mediation." His words made my heart race. This would be bad for me if it went to mediation. It would be difficult to accuse his mother of abuse and use it as a reason for divorce, as I had researched at my parents' house. So, I decided to tell them a lie that I had thought of at that moment. "I don't mind if it goes to mediation. But if it does, your mother might get arrested for abuse. Just be prepared for that." "What do you mean by abuse?" His mother, who approached me with a frightening face, had no resemblance to the mother-in-law I used to like. I was suspected of abuse at the hospital. I told them I didn't do it, and I got a medical certificate. The marks on Emily's neck are also photographed. If I can prove that these hands belong to your mother, the abuse will be proven. If John insists on going through divorce mediation, I will submit the medical certificate and photos. In reality, this method had almost no effect. Even if it could be proven, it might not be considered abuse if they realized it was just a one-time incident. However, they seemed to believe it. "That would be a problem. Please think it over again. I have no intention of reconsidering. Besides, if you're going to file for mediation, I will comply, but I will make sure the dates are on weekdays. Can you prioritize us over your important work? John flinched when I said this. His mother was constantly begging him, "Hey, John. Please divorce her. I'm gonna get caught." For a while, John was silent, deep in thought. I added, "I will use any means necessary to divorce you. Even if it goes to mediation, even if your mother gets arrested, and even if you have to take time off work, it won't change the fact that we are getting divorced. If that's fine with you, go ahead." After thinking for a while longer, John reluctantly agreed to the divorce. Throughout the discussions about property division and child support, John repeatedly asked, "You're kidding, right? And can't you reconsider?" But I ignored all of it. In the end, we agreed to divide the assets in half and set the child support at $400 per month. My husband was reluctant to agree to the divorce until the very end, but it seemed like he finally realized my stance wasn't going to change, so he reluctantly agreed. I told him, "Feel free to dispose of all my belongings," and then I left the house. I had no intention of taking anything from that house with me. We had furniture at my parents' house, and I didn't want to remember anything about this house. As I left through the front door, I could hear John and his mother arguing. "It's all your fault, Mom. John, you said you didn't want Emily either, right? This is what you get." "What did you say?" "I covered for you so you wouldn't get caught. If you hadn't done that, we wouldn't have had to go to the hospital, and I wouldn't have had to hear all this. It's all your fault. I don't want Michelle to leave. I want you to leave." Later, I heard through the grapevine that John and his mother had separated. Apparently, they had been fighting non-stop since the incident. They were blaming each other for the divorce. Since the apartment was in John's name, his mother was kicked out and is now working in a cleaning job, being bossed around by people more than 20 years her junior. It's been a year since then, and Emily is growing up safely without any lingering effects. She's starting to learn words, calling me Mom and even saying Grandpa and Grandma. She's getting better at many things every day. My mother is looking after her, allowing me to rejoin the workforce at a local company. With my previous experience, I was placed in the planning department, but unlike John, I prioritize my family over work. I've heard about John's situation through former colleagues. Apparently, he struggled with living alone, couldn't concentrate on his work, and the project he proposed started to fail. Eventually, John was removed as project leader and was transferred from the planning department to human resources. It's quite the ironic story. My husband, who was so devoted, got taken off the planning department, and I, who have been prioritizing our family, got assigned to it. Moreover, my work is going really well. When I brainstorm with my daughter on my lap, a ton of great ideas come to me, and I'm able to write excellent project proposals. Not just in terms of work, my personal life has also been flourishing recently. There's this single father from my workplace, and things are going pretty well between us. We first hit it off talking about our kids and have become good friends since. On weekends, we take our kids to parks or amusement parks. His 3-year-old son has taken a liking to me, and he plays with my daughter too. He's also kind to my daughter, so I want to keep seeing him. I've just got divorced, so I'm not thinking about remarrying right away, but if things continue to go well, I hope someday I might become his wife. How dare you! With those words from my mother-in-law, I was kicked out of the house. My mother-in-law, Patricia, had been injured and was urgently taken to the hospital. I had rushed there with my husband, Mark, only to be suddenly confronted with such an accusation. All eyes, including those of my husband and father-in-law named Bill, turned to me. And so, I was expelled from the family for an unfounded crime. But I had no memory of doing anything wrong. Later, with advice from a certain individual, I realized there was a shocking truth about Patricia. My name is Sarah. I'm a 37-year-old housewife. I've been a housewife since I got married to Mark 10 years ago. I don't have many friends, so I mostly stay at home. Mark and I have been dating since college and decided to get married a while after we both started working. A few years back, we started living with my father-in-law Bill and mother-in-law Patricia. Originally, we wanted to have kids, and decided against living together considering the kids. But, we found out we had trouble conceiving. We tried infertility treatments desperately, but couldn't have a child. Continuing the treatments would not only be expensive but also mentally stressful, so we decided not to have children. That's when talks about living with my in-laws began. Honestly, I wasn't too keen on the idea. But my in-laws didn't seem like bad people, so I thought maybe living with them might be okay. We began living together on the condition that Mark would always have my back. Considering the age of Patricia and Bill, I handled most of the household chores. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., adjusting to their schedule, and make breakfast. Lunch was made according to their individual schedules. I did the cleaning daily and sometimes even drove them to the hospital when I had some spare time. I did my best for my in-laws and I thought our relationship wasn't that bad. But one day, I overheard a conversation between Patricia and Bill. That day, I had plans to have lunch with a friend, so I made lunch for my in-laws early and left the house. I was enjoying lunch at a cafe with my friend, but she had to leave early because her daughter got a fever. As a result, I ended up parting ways with my friend a few hours earlier than we had originally planned. I thought about making a detour somewhere, but I just did my grocery shopping for dinner and headed straight home. I figured my elderly in-laws would feel more at ease if I was home. After finishing shopping, I opened the front door and headed for the living room. There's a hallway leading to the living room, and my in-laws' bedroom is off of it. I heard them conversing as I walked by. They usually keep their door completely shut, but that day it was slightly ajar, allowing their conversation to filter out. I wasn't initially curious about their conversation, but the moment I was about to walk past, I heard my name. Intrigued, I wanted to know what they were discussing. Leaning close to the door, I was met with a barrage of shocking words. "Sarah's out having lunch with her friend again. She did the same just recently. Despite being a full-time homemaker, she lives a carefree life. Without Mark, she wouldn't be able to maintain that lifestyle. Well, maybe Sarah just needs a break every once in a while. But I do feel it's unfair. We can't dine out because of our health, yet she goes out all the time on her own." Exactly. Why did he marry her? I wished he married the one he was dating before. Besides, Sarah has a rather unrefined side. Her cooking isn't great either. I discovered that especially my mother-in-law had a negative perception of me. I had never heard such comments directly, and Mark had never mentioned that his parents disliked me. So this was my first time realizing that they did. Knowing they disliked me made interactions with them somewhat awkward. Of course, I continued with my usual chores and tasks, but the conversations between us started dwindling. It was hard to confide in Mark, and if I did, confronting the in-laws would likely lead to denial, making my case harder. As I pondered what to do next, things took a worse turn. My mother-in-law's cherished necklace went missing. And shockingly, she blamed it on me. She demanded a search of my room, and to prove my innocence, I complied. Though I was certain I hadn't taken it, Patricia's necklace mysteriously emerged from a drawer containing my jewelry. See, I knew it was her. She always eyed my necklace with envy. I bet she's taken other things too. With that, Mark and my father-in-law frantically searched my room. In the end, only the necklace was found. I was left standing in the middle of the room, feeling ostracized. From that day on, I was treated like a thief, distanced by the family. They wouldn't listen to any of my explanations. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law was spreading nasty rumors about me throughout the neighborhood. That woman stole my necklace. Can you believe it? And she keeps denying it, even though it was found in her room. Given the talk, every time I left the house, I was met with cold stares. Life went on this way for a while, and being home became increasingly uncomfortable. Usually, I would stay home, engage in my hobby of crafting, and converse with my in-laws. However, lately, I had been spending more time outside. After preparing breakfast for the in-laws in the morning, I would head out. I'd kill time at diners or comic book stores until Mark returned from work. One day, I received a call from Mark informing me that his mother had been urgently hospitalized. "Where are you?" "Mom fell down some stairs at a pedestrian bridge and got injured. Please come to the nearest hospital from the house. Dad and I will be with Mom," Mark said hurriedly, before hanging up. I happened to be close to the hospital at that moment, so it only took me about 5 minutes to get there on foot. After quickly finishing up some errands, I walked briskly to the hospital where I heard my mother-in-law had been taken. I asked a nurse which room she was in, and as I headed to the room, I had an ominous feeling. When I opened the door, everyone present turned to look at me simultaneously. Their gazes were sharp and hostile, like they were looking at a villain. I thought my bad feeling might be right. Then, my mother-in-law pointed at me and shouted, "How dare you?" When I asked what was going on, she exclaimed, "Don't play dumb. You pushed me down the stairs. When I was walking over the pedestrian bridge near the house, I felt someone push me from behind. It hurt so much when I fell, but with the last of my strength, I looked up, and there you were. You vanished before others gathered, but I'm sure it was you." "No, I didn't." I tried to explain that it wasn't me, but my husband and father-in-law interrupted. "I never thought you'd be capable of such a thing. Just leave our home." "I agree. This is for the best. You two had issues before. It's better if you live separately." "That's right. Just leave. You're not family. And Mark, you should divorce her." "Yeah, I'm going to," Mark said. Without being able to defend myself, it was decided that we would divorce, and I would be ousted from the family. Leaving the hospital before my husband and father-in-law, I felt lost. I never imagined things would turn out this way, and my parents live far away. It would take a lot of effort to move my belongings there. Moreover, my parents were strict, and I didn't know what they'd say if I told them I was divorcing. However, at that moment, I thought they were the only ones I could rely on. On my way home from the hospital, I called my mother. "I'm sorry. I'm gonna get a divorce and I want to come back for a while. Is that okay?" Hearing the tone of my voice, my mother sensed something was wrong. "Okay, I understand. I'll tell your father. Just pack what you can for tomorrow. We'll rent a large vehicle and come over." When I got home, I packed my belongings as my mother instructed. I couldn't take everything, so I left the furniture. I packed my clothes, accessories, and mementos in boxes. I came across a photo of me and my husband. I wasn't sure if I should keep it. I loved him and I thought we could have lived happily together if it weren't for this incident. But I knew there was no going back. I'm sure he'll contact a divorce lawyer by tomorrow, and I've decided to throw away all the pictures of my husband once and for all. The next day, my parents came over in a large truck that could carry all my stuff. "Long time no see. You probably didn't sleep well last night. I'll drive, so you just rest in the car." And my father drove the long 6-hour journey by himself. My father had told me to get some sleep, but tears streamed down my face in the back seat, overwhelmed by my parents' kindness. I wasn't sure if they noticed or not, but they, sitting in the front, didn't say a word to me. After about 3 hours, my parents and I made it back home safely. "I know you're tired, but could you tell me a bit more about what happened? You haven't done anything wrong, right? Given the situation, there's a chance you could be arrested, so I really want you to tell me everything," my parents asked, looking for more details. I explained that I was suspected of stealing my mother-in-law's necklace and now was being accused of pushing her down the stairs. "That's a lie, right? Why would anyone make up such a story? I think someone either wanted to harass you, or they had something to hide. That's the only two options I see." "Something to hide? Maybe someone who shouldn't have been there was present and Patricia got seriously injured by accident." So they're trying to blame it on Sarah to cover it up, maybe? What my father said made sense. But I had always thought such things only happened in TV shows or movies. No official complaint was made, and I just wanted to get a peaceful divorce. However, it seemed my parents thought otherwise. Well, it made sense. If their only daughter was being framed, they'd naturally want to prove her innocence. Maybe we should do a bit more investigation? I'll also reach out to some folks I know. Considering my parents' advice, I decided to look deeper into the matter. Just as I was about to look into the situation in detail, divorce papers from my husband's attorney were mailed to my parents' house. I thought having the divorce papers in front of me might make me reconsider. But to my surprise, I realized my feelings for my ex-husband Mark were gone. Probably because he had never supported me. Over time and through various events, I just didn't love Mark anymore. Having finally cut ties with Mark and both his parents, I began to seriously investigate the incident. Patricia, who used to be my mother-in-law, doesn't seem to have filed a complaint, and it appears the police and hospital staff find it a bit suspicious. Given the fuss she made, everyone probably expected her to file a complaint. Digging deeper would be quite a hassle. So, I decided to seek help from my father. He used to work for the NYPD, so he has many connections within the force. He was able to arrange for me to view the security footage from the nearby cameras. Security cameras don't store footage for very long, but thankfully, the footage around the staircase where Patricia was allegedly pushed was still available. Examining the footage closely, it was clear that Patricia was indeed pushed down the stairs. However, no matter how much they zoomed in, it wasn't me. To further solidify my alibi, I checked the footage from where I was at the same time. It showed me taking care of some business. This proved my innocence. Turns out, when I got the call about Patricia's accident, I was at a different hospital. Having endured more than my fair share of harassment from Patricia and her group, I had been visiting a psychiatrist. That day, I had an appointment, and the footage showed me leaving the psychiatrist's office. This confirmed I wasn't to blame, but I wasn't gonna let it end there. To clear my name from all the humiliation I'd suffered, I chose to confront Patricia and her group head-on. I brought an attorney with me and headed to Mark's house. After consulting with an attorney, it turned out that due to the emotional distress I suffered, I might be able to claim compensation. At home, there were Mark, Patricia, and Bill, my ex-father-in-law, all staring at us with puzzled looks. "Who's that guy? Why bring someone like that here now? I said I wouldn't press charges, so you should be grateful." In response to Patricia, the attorney presented a document. "What's this?" The document stated that I was not the cause of Patricia's injury, and that someone else had pushed her down the stairs. I apologize for the late introduction. I am Sarah's attorney. As mentioned in this document, Sarah was somewhere else on the day you testified that she was pushed down the stairs. Of course, we've already verified the truth with security camera footage. If you'd like, I can show you the footage. And there was another person visible near the stairs besides you, Patricia. When the attorney explained that much, Patricia quickly pulled the document towards herself. "What the heck is this? Just when I thought you'd suddenly show up, this is all in the past. I said I'd forgive you, so please don't bring it up anymore." Patricia was clearly panicking. Both Mark and Bill seemed suspicious. "Why are you so flustered? If Mom didn't do anything wrong, you should be confident about it." "That's right. We're on Patricia's side, after all." Despite their reassuring words, Patricia's face grew paler. "Aren't you too curious about who pushed Patricia down the stairs? I do wonder. Who was it? Who would do such a thing to my dear wife? I won't forgive them." "Well, hold on a sec." Ignoring Patricia's attempt to stop me, I continued. "It was Patricia's affair partner." "Her affair partner?" Patricia had been infatuated with a man for some time. That man was a bartender, and Patricia had gone into debt just to lavish money on him. However, no matter how much money she gave him, he never truly belonged to her. Frustrated, Patricia confronted him. That confrontation took place at the top of those stairs. Even though the Patricia didn't own the man, reports indicate that there was a physical relationship between them. It seems Patricia was waiting for the man to leave the bartender job, but he showed no signs of leaving and often went out with other customers. The man had always seen Patricia as a troublesome client, and in a fit of anger, he allegedly pushed her down the stairs. Realizing the gravity of his actions, the man tried to help Patricia, but she said, "It's okay. We'll say my daughter-in-law did this. You should go home." Unable to approach the police for this particular investigation, they had no choice but to hire a private investigator. Pictures capturing the two are clear, and there's no way to deny it. Upon presenting the evidence to the police, an immediate investigation was launched, and the man was arrested. During interrogation, he confessed everything that transpired between him and Patricia on the staircase.
Tell me it's a lie. Please say it isn't true. Cheating, huh?
You're the worst. Realizing there's no escaping the truth, Patricia immediately began to apologize.
I'm sorry. I was just so lonely. What do you mean, lonely? I've always been there for you. We're getting a divorce. I don't want to hear any excuses.
Upon being exposed, Patricia faced an immediate decision of divorce. Though she tried desperately to salvage her relationship with Bill, he was too enraged to listen. Mark, too, was shocked to learn of his mother's infidelity and looked at Patricia with disgust. Moreover, the amount of debt Patricia accumulated to lavish the man was several $100,000, an amount she couldn't possibly repay with her pension alone. Patricia wasn't the type to save money, so repaying the debt would likely take a significant amount of time. She begged Mark for help, but he snapped back, "Are you kidding me? Because of your lies, I divorced Sarah. I'm not giving you a single dime for the money you borrowed for your lover." In the end, Patricia faced both a divorce and being disowned by Mark. Unable to repay the money and left without a place to stay, Patricia had no choice but to sadly return to her own home. To pay off the debt as soon as possible, it seems that Patricia's elder brother, who took over the family house, has taken on the responsibility. However, she'll be isolated until she repays all the money to him. Patricia can't just go outside as she pleases, and she doesn't have any money to spend freely. When Patricia receives her pension, it's all ordered to be given to her brother. I bet she regrets mingling with that bar and harassing me. I haven't seen Patricia since then, but apparently, the once youthful-looking Patricia has aged considerably. And for me, having been mentally tormented by those three on a daily basis, I managed to get a small amount in damages. From a certain point, whenever I spoke to those three, I always made sure to have a voice recorder on, so I had more than enough evidence when claiming for damages. Later on, I received numerous messages and voicemails from Mark expressing his wish to reconcile. But I'm not gonna get back with Mark. Even though he had promised to always be on my side when we moved in together, just thinking of being with Mark, who couldn't even keep that single promise, gives me the creeps. I'm sure if we were together in the future, I'll find more unpleasant things about him, and in the end, I'd be the one getting hurt. It seems Mark and Bill are living together, but with Patricia and I gone, their house is said to be filled with a cold atmosphere. Bill isn't very strong health-wise, so he needs regular hospital visits. Mark juggles his job and housework while also driving Bill to and from the hospital. It must be quite tough for him. I get diary-like messages from him every day about his daily struggles, but I usually send them straight to the trash without reading all of them. Since divorcing Mark, I've been enjoying my single life. I've successfully found a new job, and I became a beauty advisor, something I've always wanted to be. Up until now, I was always occupied with looking after Mark and my in-laws, so my own beauty regimen was always on the back burner. During a time when I was away from my in-laws, I once visited a department store's cosmetics section. There, I received advice on how to enhance my beauty and was told how to be more confident. That was the first time in my life I felt so confident, and I believe the beauty advisor at that time played a huge role in making me who I am today. That's why I decided to pursue a career as a beauty advisor, hoping to inspire others the way I was inspired. Although the job involves many behind-the-scenes tasks and challenges, I find it fulfilling. Thankfully, since becoming a beauty advisor, I've received many compliments on my appearance. I've started to attract attention from men. A while back, a man approached me at a cafe, and we've been on several dates since. Just the other day, after confessing his feelings, we officially started dating. He knows I'm divorced, and even after knowing my past, he expressed his feelings for me. Unlike Mark, he's always supportive, and he's the first one to lend a hand when I'm in need. It's been 3 years since my divorce from Mark, and I'll soon turn 40. Lately, I've been pondering if remarrying wouldn't be such a bad idea. But first and foremost, I want to be someone I'm proud of and want to continue improving myself. I genuinely wish that women with feelings like mine would be more confident and speak up without fear. I'm not exactly pretty-faced, and to be blunt, I'm overweight. Yet, despite this, a man married me, a man I genuinely loved. Now that I'm pregnant, he told me, "I hate poor people like you. I'm gonna divorce you, a fat and ugly woman like you. Raise the child in your belly on your own." I can't believe he said such hurtful things to me. I wonder how he could say that to me. My name is Catherine. Growing up, I was never the center of attention, always in the quieter groups. To be honest, I've always been on the heavier side, and I'm well aware I don't have a traditionally cute face. So, I never really had admirers. But, surprisingly, I was quite athletic in school and was one of the top performers during PE. The female gym teacher would often compliment me, saying,
"Catherine, you're so flexible and healthy. Your skin even glows more than anyone else's."
I suppose being top-notch in PE was the only area where I could shine. And having a gym teacher notice that made me incredibly happy. After high school, I chose to attend a beauty and health vocational school. I genuinely enjoyed learning about makeup techniques, body mechanics, and how to maintain good posture. I was among the top students. And I felt this was my calling. Eventually, I found a job at a spa that offered massages. It wasn't a big company, and the pay wasn't great. But I felt a sense of purpose, and many clients requested me. The spa wasn't exclusively for women, men could also get oil massages and relaxation massages. One of the male clients was Bob. Bob once said, after one of my massages,
"You're really good. I don't think I can get a massage from anyone but you."
He praised me a lot. He even advised,
"Why not spread your skills more? You're that good."
It felt great to be complimented on something I'm confident in, so I naturally developed feelings for him. I mean, anyone can do what I do. But yeah, I trained all the staff here. I replied modestly, but deep down, I was falling for Bob. Perhaps he sensed my feelings, because he eventually asked me out. Bob knew many trendy places, and he was fun to talk to. Being with him always lifted my spirits, and I started thinking of marriage. And maybe he sensed that too. Because he proposed, and we got married. It felt like the peak of my life. I mean, I never stood out in school, wasn't particularly pretty, and was overweight. Because of that, I never experienced being popular or sought after. Yet, I was able to marry such a wonderful man. We rented a small apartment and began our life as a married couple. I imagined a future filled with endless smiles and happiness. I would even daydream to that extent. But those hopes were too idealistic. The times of such joyful smiles didn't last very long. My sister became the source of trouble in our marriage. Yes, I have an older sister named Rachel. Rachel was the opposite of me, pretty and with a great figure. She was always popular with the boys in school, and she's dated so many that I doubt she can even keep track. But to be honest, I never really liked Rachel. She always looked down on me because of our contrasting appearances.
"Catherine, look at this dress. Isn't it cute? You should try wearing something like this." "Oh, but I doubt it'd fit you. The dress would probably feel so sorry,"
she teased, laughing. Another time, she said, Oh my, someone confessed their feelings to me again, even though I told them I have a boyfriend. I must be super attractive. Catherine, you're lucky, you probably don't have such problems, right? She would often make these annoying remarks. But I couldn't retort because Rachel wasn't wrong. I'd always hoped to avoid her as much as possible since she was always like this. But suddenly, Rachel started visiting the apartment where Bob and I lived. It was right around the time when I found out I was pregnant. Unexpectedly, Rachel said with sincerity,
Catherine, you're pregnant? Congratulations.
Hearing that, I was a bit shocked. Maybe her perspective changed since I got married. My feelings of surprise turned to joy. However, I felt a bit off shortly after. After looking around our place, she asked, Is Bob not home today? I thoughtlessly told her he was at work, but she kept talking about him. So, what's Bob like? Does he get weekends off? Where do you guys usually go for dates? I was bombarded with questions. I felt she spent more time talking about that than my pregnancy. It started to bring back all the negative feelings I had about her, but she just asked her questions and then left. The short interaction left me feeling drained. But after that, almost every weekend, Rachel started coming over. Bob was home on weekends, and initially, Rachel was all smiles and greeted him.
Bob, you're gonna be a dad soon. Congratulations.
But, as her visits became frequent, she began to focus her attention solely on Bob, barely acknowledging me. Moreover, she started showing up in stylish clothes she usually wouldn't wear. I've never been much of a catch, but after all, I'm still a woman. I could see through Rachel's intentions. She was definitely coming to see Bob. It was evident from the way her voice and expressions became more feminine around him. Despite my growing discomfort, the bond between them seemed to be strengthening. I had always believed that Bob wouldn't fall for someone like Rachel, especially now that he's my husband. But as time passed, I began to feel an unsettling atmosphere, like my trust in him was being eroded. While Rachel and Bob's relationship appeared to grow closer, Bob's attitude towards me seemed to be cooling. Usually, when he'd come home from work, he'd say with a bright voice,
I'm home. I've had a long day and can't wait to eat your cooking.
And during dinner, he'd praise,
This is so delicious. I'm so lucky to eat your cooking every day.
However, a few weeks after Rachel started visiting, those kind words vanished. Instead of his usual demeanor, when Bob came home from work, he'd sigh and grumble. Man, today was exhausting. Why on earth does the boss talk so darn long? And during dinner, he started to complain. I really wanted to eat some meat today. This isn't filling at all. I felt increasingly lonely and finally confronted Bob. Hey! Have you been irritated lately? Why does every day seem so miserable to you? To my surprise, Bob shot me an angry glare. Something I hadn't seen even when we were dating.
What? I don't want to hear that from you. You don't understand anything. After all, you just work some slow-paced job and earn peanuts.
His words felt harsh, almost like verbal abuse. I was deeply hurt, on the verge of tears. I never wanted to fight, but I couldn't stay silent either. I don't work slowly, and my salary isn't that low. Before I could say more, Bob cut me off.
That's enough. I'm gonna take a bath and then hit the hay.
And with that, he headed straight to the bathroom. From then on, Bob often came home late and was constantly on his phone when he was home. I had a growing sense of unease. Especially since I was nearly 7 months pregnant. I didn't want to think negatively, but there were things I couldn't help but wonder about. One day, I gently prodded. Rachel hasn't been around lately, has she? Indeed. Rachel, who used to visit almost weekly, had suddenly stopped coming. However, Bob nonchalantly replied, Who knows? Rachel lives in the next town over. If we wanted to see her, we could any time. This response alarmed me. I had never mentioned that Rachel lived in the neighboring town. Moreover, Rachel had just moved there barely a month ago. By that time, she had already stopped coming to our apartment. Unable to contain my suspicions any longer, I blurted out.
How do you know Rachel lives in the next town? Are you hiding something with her? It sure seems like it.
I finally blurted it out clearly. It was clear how much Bob meant to me, which is why I expressed myself so emotionally. I expressed my feelings so strongly just because I wanted to convey how I felt. But Bob seemed indifferent. Instead, he smirked and said, all right, I get it. If you're gonna be this way, we should just break up. Honestly, I'm not into women who've put on weight like you. And with your low earnings, life ain't fun. I don't like being poor. Divorce might be our only option. I was overwhelmed with shock, anger, and sadness. Especially with our baby on the way.
That's so cruel. What about our child?
In rapid succession, he retorted.
Raise the kid by yourself. I'm not gonna be that child's father anymore. Look, I like beautiful women with great figures like Rachel. I've decided to marry Rachel once I divorce you. So, you're useless to me now. I married you because you were good at massages and seemed like you'd handle the housework, but I'm over it.
He was just going off. I couldn't even get a word in. But being told such blunt truths made me change my feelings instantly. There's no point being with this man anymore. Actually, I realized I didn't want to be. Surely, Bob and Rachel had something going on. With my feelings completely cooled, I told him. All right, let's break up then. Take care. Then, I handed him the business card of the divorce attorney I had prepared, foreseeing this situation.
Wow, you're quick. I can divorce you right away with this. Once it's finalized, I might just head over to Rachel's place. You can keep living your broke life.
Bob was all excited as he took the business card, but if he truly planned on marrying Rachel, that excitement would probably fade pretty quickly, wouldn't it? But he didn't seem to realize that yet. So, I immediately started preparing to move out. I quickly secured a new place and decided to live there for a while. My belly was starting to show, and I was thinking of taking a break from work. About a month after I left our home, my phone rang one day. It was Bob. Even if I didn't answer, I knew what he wanted. Still, I picked up to settle things. His voice was frantic.
Hey, where are you? Do something, come on.
I calmly responded. I'm in one of the new luxury condos. It's spacious, has a great view, it's perfect. There was a pause from Bob.
What? How can someone broke like you afford such a place?
He'd probably think that way, wouldn't he? After all, he just assumed I was broke without knowing the whole story. But to be clear. Why? Because I have around $700,000 in savings. And my monthly income is around $50,000. He probably wouldn't believe it, but it was true. What I mean is, sure, the income from treatments at that workplace alone might not have been that much. However, the truth is, I was actually allowed to have a side job within that workplace. I taught remote massage classes online. At the workplace, I became an instructor, teaching beauty and health courses, including massage techniques. Initially, the spa owner appreciated my skills and knowledge, suggesting I try it. The staff at the same workplace also acknowledged that they improved faster thanks to my teachings. However, in the beginning, there wasn't much in terms of results. It was probably like that when I first started dating Bob too. Things changed, and now I have about 2,000 students nationwide. With a $50 membership fee, I made $100,000 monthly. I got half of it, so my share was really $50,000. When I told Bob this, he shouted,
Why didn't you tell me sooner? We wouldn't have divorced. And we could have lived in a better house.
Too little, too late. He had always seen me as just a housemaid good for chores and massages. He'd always assumed I didn't earn much. Regarding the house choice with Bob, I told him, I was matching your income level. After all, we agreed to split living expenses. So, if you're calling that a poor lifestyle, doesn't that mean your income isn't that great to begin with? I made sure to say it plainly. And, to twist the knife further, I added sarcastically. But, are you happy now that you married Rachel? I heard, you two really did get hitched. Congratulations. The reason this stings is because he must be facing hefty financial demands.
What the hell? I'm not happy at all. And what's this alimony about?
Indeed, I had consulted with a private investigator about Bob even before our divorce. So, after our divorce, I received evidence of him cheating with Rachel. So, I tried claiming compensation for emotional distress. But the tragedy doesn't end there for Bob. Turns out, Rachel had a significant debt, and she was making Bob pay for it. Rachel always attracted a lot of attention, and she was notorious for her affairs. Furthermore, Rachel had previously been through a divorce. The reason for their separation was Rachel's infidelity. Consequently, she had been charged with child support and property division due to that divorce. To cover these payments, Rachel had already accumulated a significant amount of debt. I was, of course, aware of this. Now, the situation is a reflection of Bob's decision to marry such a woman. Moreover, I'll also be claiming child support for the baby I'm carrying. So, with our divorce, Bob now faces a slew of hefty payments and has started a life burdened with debt. When I explained all this, Bob exclaimed,
Hey, the baby in your belly is mine, right? A child needs a father. Right, Catherine?
But who was the one who cruelly called me ugly and fat? Now, it's too late for such remarks, and there's no way I'm going to accommodate him. If you need money, why not spread your skills to everyone? You told me, remember? That everyone would benefit from Catherine's expertise. I took that advice and look where I am now. You should do the same. I suggested. It's pretty ironic, really. Because even though he was the one who suggested it, I was the one who acted on his advice, earning a high income. He neglected to notice my growing income and rashly labeled me as poor and then discarded me. Now, he's the one leading a life of poverty. Nowadays, Rachel keeps telling him,
What's wrong with you? I thought you were a capable man, but you're nothing but common folk. Work harder and earn more money. You're just a man to repay my debts.
Come to think of it, when Rachel asked about Bob in the past, I thought it would be best to speak slightly favorably of him, so maybe I embellished the truth a bit. But all things considered, since both have similar life stories and ended up together, maybe they should just figure things out together. That's what I conveyed before ending the call. Nowadays, Bob is working day and night, juggling his main job and side jobs, trying to repay the massive debt he's incurred. All while Rachel, his wife, doesn't seem to be working earnestly at all. It's a living nightmare. Well, can't be helped. Bob not only abandoned me, but also the child in my womb. It's only fitting as a punishment. On the other hand, a couple of months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. While he's been dealt the card of not having a father, my parents and my workplace's owner have been supportive, and the child is growing up well. The initial months of raising a child meant I couldn't engage in any work-related activities, but fortunately, I had savings. Unexpectedly, even after my temporary retirement, my archived instructional videos kept generating steady income. Thanks to that, my child and I are leading a comfortable life. This is today's dinner. Pizza and hamburgers are good, right? Huh? What's this? Frozen food again? We've been having frozen food a lot lately. Don't you think it's disrespectful to a man who's been working all day? I'm sorry. I'm just nearing my due date and it's really tough. Enough already. You really don't lift a finger, do you? Must be nice living like that. True, lately, because of my late pregnancy, we've had a lot of frozen meals, but why do I alone have to struggle and push through when my husband doesn't help at all, not just with meals but with chores too? He's still mad. I thought to myself, trying to smoothly change the topic. Hey, I forgot to get the mail from the mailbox. Can you grab it for me? I didn't want to upset him more with the frozen food issue, so I reluctantly got up and headed for the front door. And then, in the next moment, I heard the distinct click of the front door locking behind me.
Hey, what's the big deal?
You take people for granted too much. If you love frozen foods so much, why don't you freeze outside? I didn't have my phone with me. How could I spend all night outside in below freezing temperatures? As I started to panic, a man approached from behind. When I explained my situation to him, I'm a 31-year-old stay-at-home wife. My husband and I got married 3 years ago, and we're still just the two of us living together. My husband, who works at a small business, and I, a stay-at-home wife, weren't exactly rolling in dough. However, we were content with our current lifestyle. Above all, we were overjoyed when we had a baby last month. Every day was a blessing. I'm home. I picked up some deli food from the supermarket today. Thanks. I'm sorry for being such a handful with my morning sickness. It's okay. I'm gonna hop in the shower now. Being pregnant was a first-time experience for me, and everything felt new. I had heard from friends who had been pregnant about the struggles of morning sickness, but mine was much worse than the usual. Not only household chores, but even getting up to go to the bathroom was a struggle when I was lying on the couch. However, my husband was understanding and supported me like a true gentleman. This made me believe that I could get through this tough phase. Many of my friends had husbands who weren't as understanding during pregnancy. Knowing I didn't have that problem was a relief. However, we have my parents' 30th birthday anniversary tomorrow, so we're going to my family's place. I'm sorry, can I maybe skip it? It's just, the 3-hour drive one way might be too much for me right now. I've always been there for you. The least you can do is listen to me once in a while. It's pretty thoughtless of you to consider missing my parents' big day. It's true that I've always been grateful for his parents. I would love to attend if I could. When we announced our pregnancy, they came to celebrate, and even helped with some wedding costs. They've always been kind to us. But, even considering how much I appreciate them, my morning sickness was just too intense to think about attending their 60th celebration. I believe my husband understands that I'm suffering from morning sickness, but he can't truly feel what it's like. So, it seems like he really wants me to attend no matter what. We can visit them another day. Would that be okay? I think your mother-in-law would understand. We're always indebted to my folks. It's plain rude not to go. Plus, I already told them you're fine and gonna come, so don't look too sick in front of them. I get where he's coming from, but he could be a little more considerate about my situation. Stress is the worst enemy during pregnancy. And his parents' place is a 3-hour drive away from here. We'd leave early in the morning and probably return late at night. But if he's already told them we're coming, it's hard for me to back out. And I didn't want to argue further and worsen his mood, so I reluctantly agreed. Thankfully, I had medication to lessen my morning sickness, and I decided to take it before we left the next day. As expected, I felt terrible in the morning, but thanks to the meds, I felt a bit better. I thought, maybe I can get through just this one day. So, we headed to his parents' place. Their house was out in the countryside, and as we got closer, the roads got worse. The bumpy ride made me feel even sicker, and just the thought of taking the same route back home weighed on my mind. But I tried to compose myself before we arrived. The roads were busy being the weekend, and it took about 3.5 hours. But when I finally arrived at his parents' place, I took a few deep breaths to compose myself before entering. It's been a while. Thank you so much for coming. I told James it would be okay if he came by himself, knowing you weren't feeling well. Are you really okay?
I'm fine. Thank you for your concern.
I figured. My mother-in-law, having given birth to James and his brother, understood morning sickness more than I did. She knew the struggles and was concerned about me right from the get-go. If my mother-in-law was saying all that, I felt like I probably didn't need to come in the first place. But since I was already there, complaining to my husband now wouldn't help. Besides, the main focus was on the two people celebrating their 60th birthday, and I tried my best not to draw unnecessary attention. But it's pretty exhausting, both physically and mentally, to be on my guard all day. By the time we left, I think my fatigue was evident. I didn't want to inconvenience my driving husband, so I didn't sleep in the passenger seat, even though I wanted to. Why did you look so bored? Huh? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry. My parents are there. You know you have to be more considerate, right? Yeah. I'm sorry. I do think I looked tired before we left his parents' place. My mother-in-law even said, "Sorry for keeping you up so late, especially being pregnant," when we were leaving. I understand that my husband might be upset about that, but I wish he'd be more considerate of how I'm feeling first. It's not like I complained, and even with the morning sickness, I tried my best all day to not let it show. Usually, if I can't handle the housework, I'd rest. Wouldn't a simple "were you okay" in the car have been nice? It's like I didn't endure or sacrifice anything. Why can't he understand my feelings more? Such feelings welled up inside me, but I thought anything I'd say to my husband now would just add fuel to the fire. Whether it's morning sickness or whatever, he only seemed to focus on the fact that I looked tired in front of his parents, and seemed oblivious to anything else. Then came a sermon from him, and after it seemed he was satisfied, he went silent. The 2-hour ride home was filled with an indescribable tension. By the time we got home, it was past 10 p.m., and I was completely drained. Of course, having driven such a long distance, he must have been even more tired than I was. But I was at my limit and immediately laid down on the couch. Just when I felt relieved, a wave of sleepiness hit me. I thought, if I fall asleep now, that won't be good. I need to at least change my clothes and get to the bedroom. As I was grappling with these thoughts. Hey! There's no beer in the fridge. What? Didn't you put any in after drinking last night? At least manage that much. I'm gonna take a bath, so go buy some now. What? Now? It's already past 10 p.m., and I've been exhausted all day from morning sickness. Asking me to go out and buy it now. That's just devilish, isn't it? In other words, given how he's been pushing me, I've been feeling that he might not care about me as much as he did when we first got married, but I never imagined it would be to this extent. He was grumpy in the car too. I figured he'd get really mad if I refused, but I'm seriously at my limit. There's no way I'm walking to the convenience store to buy beer at this hour. Come on, that's just not possible. I'm exhausted, and I had a rough day with the morning sickness. I've told you this so many times. To me, that's just a bunch of irrelevant talk. I'm gonna take a bath now, so make sure you get it before I get out. If not, I'm seriously gonna be pissed. With that, my husband, looking at me with cold, accusing eyes, went straight to the bathroom without listening to anything I had to say. The look on my husband's face, glaring at me as if I were some sort of villain, made it clear he was dead serious. After he went to the bath, I let out a frustrated sigh and hit the couch hard with my fist. If I don't go now, I really don't know what'll happen next. This will be my last chore for the night. I'll finish shopping before he gets out of the bath and head straight to bed. With that in mind, I hurried to the convenience store, bought 3 beers, and rushed home. Luckily, my husband, who tends to take long baths, hadn't come out yet. After putting the beers in the fridge, I headed straight for the bedroom. As soon as I changed and lay down, I fell asleep as if I had passed out. I guess I was that tired, and I'm impressed I pushed myself this far. I really want to give myself a pat on the back. My husband, after enjoying his nightly drinks, must have slept in because he didn't wake up until midday the next day. Morning sickness was still bad, but it was somewhat better than the day before. Thinking I should get things done while I can, I managed to finish most of the house chores by mid-morning. As my belly grew larger, every task felt heavier, and the supportive husband I knew at the beginning of my pregnancy was nowhere to be seen. He used to be there for me, but now he just complains. I don't know what changed his attitude, but I've been doing my best every day so he won't complain, and both mentally and physically, I've been exhausted. Fast forward, and I'm now in my final month of pregnancy. Raising the child will surely be a challenge once they're born, but at least this tough pregnancy journey is coming to an end. Thinking that I'll finally meet our beloved baby soon, a sense of excitement was slowly building in my heart, different from the tough days I've been through. Welcome home. You're late, aren't you? Got some work stuff. What's for dinner tonight? Was thinking of having the pizza and burgers I got from Costco the other day. Seriously? Frozen food again. You making fun of me? I'm pregnant, and doing housework is all I can handle right now. If my husband helped with the regular chores, I could adjust my energy and time for cooking. But right now, it's impossible for me to do everything. He gets super angry if I don't do the chores, even though I have to cut down on cooking time. I wish he'd help out a bit if he's gonna complain. My husband, who's about to become a father soon, doesn't act like one at all. Wondering if this is really gonna work out, I decided to speak my mind because I've been holding back a lot. Look. It's impossible for me to do everything by myself. It'd be nice if you helped. When you have time, you're always out drinking or playing golf. You're hardly ever home. I'm about to give birth, so expecting me to be perfect is just unreasonable. Are you trying to go against me? I'm just stating the facts. I figured he'd definitely get mad at me for saying all that. But I was at my breaking point. I spoke my mind without holding back my emotions. After I finished speaking, I calmed down, bracing myself for the lecture I was sure my husband would give me. But shockingly, he just started fiddling with his phone without saying a word. Weird. Why isn't he yelling at me today? Earlier, I couldn't hold back and said something pretty harsh. Normally, my husband would have snapped back at me tenfold. Maybe the mention of being almost due made him realize his responsibility as a soon-to-be father for the first time. Well, anyway, I'm just glad nothing happened, and that night, we had frozen food for dinner. Because he came home late, we didn't finish dinner until around midnight. After taking a bath, it was past 1 a.m. when I was ready for bed. Hey, before you go to bed, can you check the mailbox? Now? At this hour? What's the big deal? It's just a small thing. Was he still upset about me serving frozen food for dinner, I wonder? Well, he hasn't been nagging me as he usually does, so I don't want to push it. And checking the mailbox will only take a minute. Doing as he asked, I went to the gate to check the mailbox. I did just as husband told me, heading to the front gate to check the contents of the mailbox. But there was nothing inside. I wonder what he wanted me to see. It was deep winter, and temperatures were well below freezing at night. Dressed in thin pajamas, I nearly froze as I hurried back towards the house. But, just as I reached for the doorknob, suddenly, there was a click from the inside, and the door was locked. What on earth? What's going on? Come on, let me in. It's below freezing, probably about as cold as inside a freezer, right? You seem to really love those frozen meals, so why not stay out here and freeze with them?
What? No, wait. Hey!
It seemed like husband had either gone to bed or was ignoring me. It was 2 a.m, and it would be impossible to stay out in this freezing cold until dawn. Besides, I was only planning to check the mailbox and head right back, so I'm really underdressed. I felt like I might freeze to death. My face and hands were burning from the cold, and my body was shivering uncontrollably. I didn't know what to do. My thoughts were becoming foggy. I repeatedly pressed the doorbell, hoping husband would come to my aid, but there was no response from him. Was this his way of getting back at me for using frozen food? I hoped he'd let me in after a few minutes, so I kept calling out to him from outside. But time just went by, and there was no sign of husband. I was getting so cold that I was running out of energy. How much longer would I have to wait? Just as I was thinking this, I heard footsteps approaching from behind. What happened to you? What? I was taken aback by this unfamiliar man, but he appeared to be a bartender who worked at a nearby bar. Since he usually slept during the day, I'd never run into him before. It seems he closed up shop early that day and was returning home around 2 a.m. when he ran into me. "What's going on? At the very least, let me get you something to wear." Though he was a stranger in the neighborhood, his gesture of offering his coat without inviting me into his home felt genuinely gentlemanly. It made me trust him, at least a little. He continued to listen to my story outside my house. Of course, normally I'd never share personal family matters with a stranger, but I was so emotionally overwhelmed at the moment, it wasn't the time to be concerned about that. I borrowed his cell phone and reached out to some folks I knew. I promised to repay him later and decided to spend the night at a business hotel. Once I reached the warm hotel room, a sense of relief washed over me, and I quickly drifted off to sleep. Before I knew it, morning had come. After checking out, I headed home. To my surprise, waiting at the gate were my in-laws. I expressed my gratitude for them coming so quickly after my call last night. But the moment I stepped onto the property, I was left speechless.
What? What on earth are you doing?
There was my husband, freezing, without any clothes on. Even in the morning, the temperature hadn't risen above 41 degrees Fahrenheit. Why wasn't he wearing anything? It made no sense. But what was even stranger was the glaring look my in-laws were giving him. Could it be? Did they do this? As these thoughts ran through my mind and I tried to grasp the situation. That foolish son of ours. I'm truly sorry. We came over right after it happened and disciplined this idiot. Discipline. I knew it. The whole situation was orchestrated by my in-laws. When the bartender helped me out, I immediately borrowed his phone to call my mother-in-law. I was so lucky that mother-in-law picked up quickly and that I remembered mother-in-law number. I honestly told mother-in-law everything that had happened with my husband and the recent incident. And there was another thing. I shared a shocking suspicion with mother-in-law that I had heard from the bartender. "Thank you for all you've done. It's the least we could do." And, as you mentioned, the rumors of his affair turned out to be true. We had a spare key to your house, so we came in early this morning and confronted our foolish son. Checked his phone, and there was clear evidence of his affair. I knew it. I felt a pang of pity for my husband, abandoned outside in the cold without any clothes, but the moment I confirmed his infidelity, any sympathy I had for him vanished. I had never considered the possibility of his cheating before. The suspicion arose just yesterday. The bartender told me he had seen my husband downtown with a younger woman. Because of his line of work in an area with lots of nightclubs and bars, he had seen my husband with a young lady a few weeks ago. Before we were married, we used to have barbecues in our backyard quite often, so I believe he recognized us. When I first heard about it, I didn't have any solid proof and I wanted to trust my husband, but if he had found someone new and stopped caring about me and stopped supporting me, especially while I'm pregnant, everything made sense. I had shared all of this with my in-laws over the phone, but to find out it was true, it's just disappointing.
If you're freezing, why don't you ask your beloved girlfriend to warm you up with her body warmth?
No, James looked as pale as a ghost, his lips turning a shade of purple. Considering the in-laws have been here for over 3 hours, he must have been left out in the cold for at least that long. Makes me wonder just how much he suffered. Well, he tried to do the same to me, so he's in no position to complain. He probably can't hold a proper conversation because the cold has numbed his mind. But honestly, I couldn't care less.
I think you know this, but I won't accept this. I'm gonna file for divorce. What?
He already looked pretty miserable from the cold, but at the mention of divorce, his face went even paler. I figured if he was treating me like this and having a good time with his mistress, she must be more important to him. Then again, maybe he's just scared of the potential alimony and child support. Either way, I doubt he ever loved me, and I don't have a shred of love left for him either.
I'm gonna sue your lover for emotional damage too, so you better be ready. Hold on, let's talk.
There's nothing to talk about. I'll decide on the alimony and child support.
You don't have a choice in this. Know your place.
Father-in-law chimed in with a firm tone, leaving husband speechless. Of course, he probably wants to get inside the house quickly to escape the freezing cold, but I think he's even more devastated about what's to come. But, he's only ever acted selfishly, so this is all a result of his own actions. He's probably gonna regret this for the rest of his life, and I hope he does. With those thoughts in mind, I decided to move back to my parents' place and leave husband for my in-laws to handle. I could tell just by looking at him that he was so frail he might need to go to the hospital. But he tried to do the same thing to me, so I have absolutely no reason to be concerned. After returning to my parents' home, I confessed everything to them. They told me it was okay to stay and raise my child there, for which I couldn't be more grateful. I decided I wanted to focus on giving birth first, so I asked my in-laws to wait until after the birth before confronting my husband. Being close to my due date, about 2 weeks after returning home, I gave birth to a big baby boy, weighing nearly 8 pounds. The moment he was born, he cried out loud, and I was so moved that I shed tears, feeling the reality of becoming a mother. For the next 3 months, I devoted myself to parenting at my parents' place. As I began to get used to life with a baby, I asked my mother-in-law and father-in-law to come visit us near my parents' home. Wow, what a healthy little boy. Congratulations on the birth. I'd always been treated well by my in-laws and, under the condition that husband wouldn't accompany them, I let them hold my son. The two of them, holding my son with smiles on their faces, looked like children themselves. I felt a pang of anger towards husband, thinking about how this should have been a happier celebration. But getting mad now seemed pointless. After spending some quality time with my son, my in-laws shifted the conversation back to my ex-husband and helped finalize discussions about alimony and child support. Thanks to their efforts over the past 3 months, the whole truth about my husband's affair came to light. We consulted a lawyer they knew, and it was decided he'd pay me the standard amount. Of course, I couldn't trust a husband who cheated, so he made a lump sum payment. He took out a loan to cover the alimony, but when it came to 20 years of child support, that was too much for him to handle, even with a loan. My in-laws graciously stepped in to help. With the divorce finalized, he's now just a stranger to me. Ex-husband's gonna pay my in-laws monthly for the child support they covered. From what I heard, it turned out that ex-husband hadn't even told his mistress he was married. She dumped him when she found out, leaving him all alone. He's now living with his parents and giving them 90% of his earnings to repay the debt. The remaining 10% barely covers his food, leaving him with no spending money. I'm not sure how long he'll continue this way, but with no savings and only the passing of time, once he's paid off his debt to his parents, it seems they might kick him out. Even when he's free from this financial hell, it seems he's got nothing but despair ahead of him. Well, he brought this upon himself, so I guess he's getting what he deserves. As for me, I'm living at my parents' house, doing my best to raise my child as a single mom. I'm still figuring out the ropes of parenthood, but my mom's been a great help, especially during those sleepless nights. It's made the whole experience mentally easier and enjoyable. I plan on relying on my parents for a while, and once my son starts elementary school, I think I'll get back to work. Plus, I still keep in touch with my in-laws and plan to visit them with my son a few times a year. While my ex-husband to ruin my life, I've got a precious new beginning with my baby, and I'm determined to lead a happy life from here on out. It all happened when we were sitting at the reception desk at our wedding. I've come here to get my compensation for the affair. Huh? Both John and I were literally dumbfounded. But what surprised me even more was the fact that John had indeed cheated.
Damn. I thought I'd never get caught.
And he was justifying it, making it impossible to have a proper conversation. Do you really think you have any appeal as a woman? I married you because you can cook well and you have a body that looks like it can bear healthy children.
Stop kidding around.
I had reached my limit and slapped John right across the face. Until now, no matter how rude John was, I had always got through it with a smile and a joke. But this time, I couldn't let it slide. I swore to myself that I wouldn't be satisfied until I had cornered him. On the long-awaited morning of our wedding, I was in the dressing room, wrapped in a pure white dress, secretly hoping that John would tell me, "Lily, you look beautiful." John had been high-spirited since the day before, genuinely looking forward to the wedding. I thought he would be pleased to see me looking different. In fact, I looked better than usual in the mirror, and both my parents and my in-laws praised me. I'm a bit on the chubby side and usually dress plainly. But today, I thought I should be allowed to enjoy being the star of the show. John and I are from the same university. When I was a freshman, he was a senior. I was a member of the broadcasting club, and that's how I met John, who was the captain of the sports team and a well-known figure on campus. Our relationship developed smoothly, and we submitted our marriage registration before our wedding, and we've been living together for the past 3 months. Living together made the wedding preparations more efficient. The wedding venue was about a 10-minute train ride from our house. It was a casual restaurant without any formality. The beautiful and stylish interior made it very popular for private parties. John entered the dressing room. I suppressed my excitement and asked, "Does the dress suit me?" Immediately, John broke into a wide smile and stroked my head. "You've still got a round belly, haven't you? Hope you'll give birth to a healthy baby." I was utterly dumbfounded. Even our parents frowned. "At least don't say that today." "Why?" "It's the truth. I even went on a diet to fit into this dress for the wedding, you know?" I forced a smile and patted my belly. In such moments, I feel bad inside, but I always try to brush it off with a joke. One of John's shortcomings is that once he gets too carried away, he can't stop himself. He was teasing and said, "Hey, your belly looks like a balloon." The bride is supposed to be the most beautiful woman on her wedding day. Stop it before you hurt Lily's feelings. John pretended not to know what he had done wrong, saying, "Well, a fat person is a fat person. I'm sorry for our son, he's always been childish. Even though you are younger, you are much more mature." There was no blame for my mother-in-law. "I don't mind. It's just his usual self." I flashed a grin and laid on the sarcasm as thick as I could. The two of us quickly pulled ourselves together and took our seats at the reception desk. We wanted a homey wedding and decided to greet the guests personally, bride and groom both. Sadly, most of my friends live on a distant island, where my parents' home is, so they couldn't make it. On the flip side, John had a lot of acquaintances attending. We were okay with the imbalance. My parents and I had made our peace with it. I saw this as a golden opportunity to meet many of John's friends and was actually looking forward to the greetings. John introduced each guest to me, one by one. Every single one of them seemed delighted to meet me, complimenting me with a "You look like a beautiful bride." There was one guest, in particular, that stood out, a woman named Natasha. She was an acquaintance from work, as I understood. She seemed to be in her 40s, but she had this actress-like aura, especially in her dress and her tall, slender figure. "Nice to meet you, Lily. I've always been under John's care," she greeted me. "Oh, is that so?" I was certainly overwhelmed by Natasha. "He's a looker, right? And she's got her stuff together at work. Quite a different story from someone else I know." She indeed had the aura of someone who's competent at her job. Her designer suit fitted her perfectly without being too flashy, and her makeup was flawless. John was looking at Natasha with a kind of admiration in his eyes that he never showed to me, and Natasha was gracefully accepting his attention. They exchanged words for quite a while. Right now, I'm a full-time housewife. But originally, I left my job because of John's wishes. He insisted that he wanted me to focus on our home. I had only been at my job for 2 years. Just when things were starting to get interesting, I felt pressured to resign. When I think about the unfinished business at my old job, I still feel a tug at my heartstrings. Looking at Natasha, who seemed so dazzling, made these feelings even stronger. This is wrong. Today's supposed to be about us. Our guests should leave having had a good time. I swallowed the anger rising inside me due to John's insensitive remark and kept up with the greetings. Then, a middle-aged man in a suit appeared. He had this impressive demeanor, almost like a distinguished actor. "Who's that gentleman over there?" I looked at John, but he seemed to be as clueless as I was. Maybe he wandered in by mistake. It's supposed to be a private event. Just as I was wondering how to handle this situation, the man spoke up. "I'm here to discuss the compensation for an affair." "Excuse me?" John and I were literally stunned. "I'm in this line of work." The man handed out his business card with a professional demeanor. It bore the name of a well-known company, and his job title was impressive. He was dressed in an expensive suit, and he carried himself with calm and composure. He didn't seem like he was making things up. "Are you John? Could you please break it off with my wife?" "Wait a minute, John and I are getting married today." I tried to calm the man down, but then I noticed John trembling beside me. "What are you talking about?" John managed to squeeze out those words, though his voice was clearly strained. "My wife should be here somewhere." "Don't play dumb, it won't get you anywhere."
Wait. Natasha and I aren't like that.
"Well, you've just admitted it yourself, haven't you? So, you're having an affair with my wife, Natasha, right?" I couldn't hide my shock.
Natasha, you mean the woman we just greeted?
"I believe so." "What did he say about Natasha?" "I heard it was work-related." "Actually, Natasha doesn't work." The man sighed deeply. "Let's change the place. Can we use the green room?" I asked my parents to handle the reception, and went ahead to the green room. The man, who introduced himself as Kyle, sat down on the sofa in the green room and started talking. It's a blatant lie that Natasha has anything work-related to do with John. I found out through her phone records that she met John on a dating site. My in-laws, who were already in the green room, exclaimed in surprise.
"We didn't know anything about this." "Don't make strange accusations, we could sue you for defamation."
But Kyle remained calm. "It seems that Natasha has been having an affair with John for 2 years. This time, I couldn't help raising my voice.
2 years ago. But we've been dating since our college days, isn't this some kind of mistake?"
The phone records show it clearly. "Actually, I've been very busy with work for the last few years, with lots of business trips and overtime. It seems that Natasha had the affair when I wasn't looking." Saying this, Kyle took an envelope out of his bag. Inside were printed screenshots of Natasha's smartphone and a couple of photos of her with John.
"This is definitely John in these photos, isn't it?"
My parents gathered around, and we all checked the photos. I've been away from home a lot, I can't say I was blameless. But does that justify an affair? My parents muttered in unison, "No, it doesn't." More than anything, Kyle's demeanor was incredibly convincing. From a certain point, Natasha started wearing a new wristwatch. It was a very nice design, so I looked it up and found out it was part of a pair. I wondered who had the other one, and that's when my investigation began. Kyle had been investigating Natasha's actions during his breaks at work, and discovered that she frequently visited a certain station. It turned out to be the station closest to John's company. They were frequently meeting up after John finished work. Kyle then took out several photos from the envelope that appeared to be taken secretly. They clearly showed John and Natasha getting cozy in a bustling district.
"You find it fun stalking like this? Don't take your frustrations out on me just because you can't keep your wife happy."
John's words were bold, but his voice was clearly trembling. "The serial number on my wife's wristwatch is 118. "What about your wristwatch?" My parents restrained Kyle. I took off John's wristwatch and looked at the back of the dial. "It's 118. This is a unique number in the world, right? Is it just a coincidence? How could that be? The evidence is all here. Why don't you just admit it and tell the truth?" Suddenly, John raised his voice and started kicking the chairs in the green room.
Damn it! I thought I'd never get caught.
John, is what this man is saying true? Without looking at us, John answered while fiddling with his smartphone. There's just one thing that's different. I really do love Natasha. My in-laws whispered to each other in a confused tone. Today, I invited her because Natasha said she wanted to see Lily. At that moment, there was a knock on the green room door. Natasha came in from the guest room. Apparently, John had called her with his smartphone. John, you really do love me, don't you? Of course. My feelings are all for you, Natasha. Natasha and John hugged each other without any hesitation. This time, I couldn't just laugh it off as a joke. I carefully chose my words and asked John. Is it true that you've been cheating? Since Natasha got married, I reluctantly decided to marry you. We met a bit too late, didn't we? If I had met John sooner, I would have married him instead of ending up with such an uncool person. Kyle straightened up from the sofa and said with a resolute attitude.
See, they're so selfish, aren't they? I'm thinking about divorcing my wife. But I'm definitely going to demand a proper compensation for it.
At the word alimony, John and Natasha momentarily flinched.
John, did you know that Natasha was married when you started dating her?
Yeah, I found out a while after we met. But by then, we were already serious about each other. So, you were cheating on me too, weren't you? Unexpectedly, John shook his head. This isn't cheating. Because I have no feelings for you. Then why were you dating me? You were just for housekeeping. What does just for housekeeping mean? According to John, Natasha was his true love, but he needed someone to take care of the household and he wanted children, so he decided to marry me. It seemed he also judged that it would be a good cover to get married around this time for the company and society.
Do you really think you're attractive as a woman? I married you because you could cook a little and you seemed like you could bear strong children. I've had enough.
I reached my limit and slapped John. It was the first time I had ever hit someone. My right hand was tingling. At the same time, I felt disgusted, as if I had touched something filthy. Immediately, Kyle pulled out a wet wipe from his bag and handed it to me. Gratefully, I took it and wiped my hands thoroughly.
Ow! What the hell are you doing? You think you're in a position to defy me?
Even my mother-in-law couldn't stay silent at his words.
Have you always talked to Lily like that? No, Mom, I just lost my temper for a moment.
Hey, Lily.
I got scolded because of you.
It's your fault. There's no way that's true. Is it really true that you've been cheating for the past 2 years? John snorted triumphantly.
You can't trust what this guy says. Besides, the photos might be fake.
But judging from your interactions, it seems like you two really are dating, aren't you? That doesn't prove anything. What, do you have a video or something? I cut into the conversation with my usual surprised tone. I have it on video.
What?
Actually, I had secretly recorded today's situation in the dressing room with a hidden camera, planning to show it as a surprise later. I took out the camera from behind the flower arrangement in the room and checked the footage. From the part where John called me fat to where Kyle confronted him about the affair, everything was recorded. Unexpectedly turning into big news. But it should be sufficient evidence of the affair. Well done, Lily. And as for this guy. Lily, I am truly sorry. My in-laws both apologized to me together. You don't need to apologize. No, it's also our fault for spoiling John and letting him become like this. What can we do to make it up to you? John, you should apologize too.
No way. I haven't done anything wrong. Loving someone is a good thing, right? That's what Mom taught me.
That's not what I meant. Stop talking back and apologize to Lily right now. It's okay.
The foolish one here is John. John, Natasha, how about making a cheating confession in front of the camera?
Say cheese. I grinned and pointed the camera at them. I didn't expect to have this side of me. Hey, don't make that face. Just joke around and reply like you always do. This is my way of joking around. I can't overlook this. Then should we cancel the wedding? You're the one who's going to be embarrassed. I was at a loss for words. The party's start time had already passed. The guests must be waiting for our entrance at the venue. No, I should stick to my own decision. Fortunately, I had invited only a few guests. And they were all trusted close friends, so I could make up for it later. The one who really deserves pity here is John. He cares about appearances, so he invited his bosses from work and even his mentors from his college days. Alright, I've got it. Let's start the wedding ceremony. However, just to let you know, we are going to change the flow a bit. I went out to the venue and took the microphone from the MC. John followed behind me. There was a round of applause from the audience. Thank you all for gathering here today. We were supposed to hold a wedding ceremony, but today's event has been changed to an emergency press conference. The venue suddenly became noisy with whispers and murmurs. With clear and articulate pronunciation, as if I had been trained in broadcasting, I continued. Today, we have a guest named Natasha, who is an acquaintance of John through work. But in reality, well, John? I turned the microphone towards John, like an interviewer. The people in the venue looked puzzled. John hesitated to speak, so I pressed him further. What is your real relationship with her? Voices from the audience also started to chime in, urging him to spill the beans already. Still, John seemed determined to remain silent. If this weren't in front of so many people, I would probably have been slapped hard. His fists were trembling under the table. No choice then. This was supposed to be a surprise for today, but please take a look at the hidden camera footage in the backstage. Everyone, please feel free to enjoy your drinks and meals. The large screen on the stage showed everything that had happened earlier, without missing a beat. As the video played, the audience watched intently, and gradually, voices of discontent started to rise. What's going on here? This is ridiculous. From the crowd, someone asked, you two are already living together, aren't you? We met in college, registered our marriage 3 months ago, and have been living together since, leading up to today. The venue was in an uproar. I thought I was marrying John out of love, but it seems I was utterly deceived. I adjusted my life for him, even quitting my job. What has my life been all about? I could hear John clicking his tongue in frustration. A different guest asked, Lily, what do you want to do now? The atmosphere had completely turned into that of a press conference. To be honest, this is all so sudden, I haven't had time to think it through. But I have my parents and trustworthy friends. I plan to figure things out together with them. This response led to a series of repeated questions from the crowd. John kept his head down, acting as if this had nothing to do with him. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you must have a lot of things you want to say, so I will leave the stage to him. You can grill him as much as you want. I put down the microphone and moved to the entrance of the venue, watching the scene unfold. John was left alone on the stage. Some young men in the audience, their tempers flaring, stood up and approached John, some even throwing drinks and food at him. All right, I get it. I was dating Natasha. Lily just wasn't enough for me. At that moment, my mother-in-law appeared, took the microphone, and addressed everyone. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for my foolish son. If it's not too much trouble, please feel free to give him a piece of your mind. At her signal, people swarmed the stage and surrounded John. I couldn't see John anymore, but I imagined he was getting what he deserved. I thought about how expensive his rental suit was. Concerned about appearances, John had rented the best suit. With this commotion, he would surely have to pay for it. Satisfied after witnessing the chorus of boos from the audience, I returned to the backstage, quickly changed out of my dress, and left the rest to my parents. I also asked them to make sure John couldn't run away from the venue. I wanted to go home immediately. Ever since we started living together, John had been extremely opposed to me entering his room. He would get angry even if I tried to enter for cleaning or searching for something. I suspected there might be some evidence of his infidelity in his room. I asked Kyle to come with me, and we left the venue, heading for home. I was grateful that we had chosen a wedding venue close to our home. Soon we arrived at our house, and the search of John's room began. And then, one thing after another started to come out. Pictures of Natasha, and what seemed to be matching accessories and a pair of watches warranty card, and letters from Natasha, were all revealed. It even came to light that he was traveling with Natasha under the guise of business trips. Kyle meticulously photographed each of these items, and I put them in a cardboard box. It was almost like a police house search. Once all the evidence was gathered, I video called my mother-in-law. "Hi, how's everything going over there?" Bravely, she responded as if nothing was unusual. "The guests are getting heated, and John is still being cornered by everyone." "That's good to hear. Can you put your phone near the microphone so that my voice can be heard in the venue?" She quickly understood what I meant and did as I asked. "Hello, can you hear me? I'm the bride who was supposed to be the star today." I could sense the murmuring in the venue quieting down. "I know some of you might be angry. I have an important announcement to make." The venue went silent. "I will be divorcing John. Unfortunately, today's wedding turned out to be a disaster, but feel free to eat and drink as much as you like, and go home whenever you're ready. The cost will be fully charged to John."
Wait. I wasn't informed about this.
Kyle, who was standing next to me, signaled for me to pass the phone to him. "While we're on the subject, I have an announcement too. I'm also divorcing Natasha." The crowd murmured in surprise. Natasha is an expensive woman. She doesn't do any housework, shops every week, and is absolutely incompetent at work. But now, both of you are free, so please, live happily ever after.
What am I supposed to do now?
You're free to do as you please. Good luck supporting Natasha's lifestyle."
I can't afford to support Natasha's lifestyle.
Natasha, who was nearby, cut in.
I'm not comfortable marrying John either.
Then you're all alone. Good riddance. Don't bother coming back home from today onwards. A round of applause erupted in the venue. Drunk guests' voices could be heard saying, "Good for her," and other cheers. Reluctantly, my mother-in-law agreed to let John stay at her house for a while. Warm messages like "It must have been tough, but you did well. We support you," started arriving on my phone from close friends who were at the venue. Afterwards, the guests reportedly indulged in a grand feast and drinks, and even made sure to take their wedding favors home with them before leaving. A few days after the tumultuous wedding, I was returning to my condo after shopping when I found John standing in front of my door, holding a disproportionately large bouquet of flowers. "I came to apologize, hoping you would forgive me. Can I come in?" "No. Come on, don't be so stubborn. The wedding was just a moment of confusion, right?"
Absolutely not.
John, for some reason, had a smug smile on his face. He tried to hand me the huge bouquet of roses. "All women love flowers, right? Cheer up." But I had shopping bags in both hands and couldn't possibly accept the flowers. Not that I wanted to, even if my hands were free.
I'm sick of your assumptions and lack of consideration. Just go home.
John slowly moved closer to me. I felt threatened and turned my back on him to call my mother-in-law. The back and forth with John continued, and when he tried to force his way into the house with a spare key, my mother-in-law arrived just in time.
What the hell are you doing?
A shout from my usually refined mother-in-law, which I had never heard before, echoed throughout the area. "Mom, why are you here?" "I came here thinking of making amends with Lily."
Don't talk nonsense and just disappear. Do not show your face in front of us ever again.
With that, my mother-in-law snatched John's bouquet and hit him square in the face with it. John's face was covered in small cuts from the rose thorns, and torn petals and leaves were scattered all over his body, making for a truly pitiful sight.
If you make any more strange moves, I'm calling the police. And don't you even think about coming back to our house.
He seemed genuinely scared by her words. John left with his tail between his legs.
I'm really sorry about this. Actually, I declared yesterday that I was severing parental ties with him. He left the house, but I never imagined he would be here.
While efficiently cleaning up the remains of the bouquet scattered on the floor, my mother-in-law apologized to me over and over again. You don't have to apologize. Please come in and have some tea.
No, I'm going to excuse myself now. If he comes near you again, don't hesitate to contact me. I will protect you, no matter what.
I was on the verge of tears from her words. I had an ally on my side. I decided to rely on her in times of trouble, and with that, we said our goodbyes. Later on, I managed to finalize the divorce, and I was relieved. I and Kyle each demanded $30,000 in damages from John. I didn't forget to claim the full $20,000 for the wedding expenses, including the gifts for the guests. The guests seemed to have enjoyed themselves quite a bit, and I couldn't help but laugh when I saw the hefty bill. John, unable to cover the costs with his salary alone, had moved to a cheap, small one-room apartment and was working tirelessly day and night. His boss had attended the wedding, which resulted in him losing face at work as well, but he couldn't afford to quit his job because he needed to make ends meet. Now, it seems like he's living every day in a very uncomfortable and awkward position. I heard from my mother-in-law that right after that incident, Natasha broke up with him. Apparently, Natasha had met another man through an online dating site and decided to date him instead. I can hardly imagine that things will go well for them. Especially since Natasha also has to pay us damages. I moved to a smaller, but nicer apartment. Moving was a hassle, but I decided it was risky to let John know where I lived. The evidence of John's affair is packed in a large cardboard box, sitting in a corner of my new home. So far, the alimony has been paid on time, but I haven't touched the money at all. Thanks to that, my savings have increased significantly. In the midst of all the commotion, a strange kind of fortune befell me. I lost about 15 pounds due to the stress of the divorce. Every time I looked in the mirror, I felt like I had been reborn. I went back to work, and through business contacts, I was able to meet a wonderful man. We are still dating, and every day is fulfilling. I have a good feeling that things will work out with my new partner this time.